Hello again, and welcome back to another edition of the Wiccan Conservative. It's been a long time since I've seen you guys. As a matter of fact, a lot of work goes into preparing and getting ready for things like the Patriot Picnic. Now, I know that a lot of people watch Timcast, and I know that he's doing an event soon, and he's constantly telling people exactly how difficult it is to coordinate these events, get your guest speakers, book the space, make the time, get all the equipment together, go to the event, host the event, and then, worry about getting the good takes to share with everybody online or people who couldn't be there, so on and so forth. Now, the thing is, Tim has an entire team dedicated to helping him prepare for these events and getting these things off the ground. People like us, we are very small in numbers, and, we don't want to be disincluded from participating in these events, but it's a little bit harder for us to get everything together and situated. And most of the time, after I come back from an event or one of these vacations, so you call it, I feel like I need an entire another vacation just to get the channel back up and running again. So I do apologize for the long, intermittent fasting of content, if you will, because there has been a lot actually going on. I know that everybody wants to see pictures and recaps of the Patriot Picnic, and I promise those are coming. As a matter of fact, Amanda and her husband took a bunch of pictures that they have to get over to me. I want to get them into a image projection or maybe a video or something of that like so that we can go over it. Amanda and I have still been in contact, and we are going to do a recap show for the Patriot Picnic sometime this coming week. So you guys know that I only record on Sundays when the information is so important that it needs to be brought to everybody's attention. And thankfully, this Sunday is a day that I'm able to actually get on here and tell you guys a little bit about what's going on. So all the Patriot Picnic stuff is coming. We have great pictures. We have great stories. We have amazing information pertaining to next year's picnic and some of the contacts that we made during this particular Patriot Picnic. We've got a lot of really good stuff that I want to have Amanda on with me to go over with you guys so that everybody is aware of what happened and how much fun it was and what we accomplished by heading out to Chattanooga. But in the meantime, let me kind of recap a little bit as to what has been going on the political spectrum while we have been away. There have been more indictments on Donald Trump. There has been a Republican debate, not once, but twice. There's been an inquiry opened into impeachment of President Joe Biden, and it's all just kind of culminating into one big cluster. And I know that there has been a lot of speculation on these different topics. And you can listen to all the pundits talk all day long about what they think is going to happen and what they believe is happening in the indictments of Donald Trump and moving forward through the inquiry impeachment for Joe Biden. But the first thing I wanted to kind of get off the table and kind of talk about a little bit would be the Donald Trump indictments in the court. So if you guys have been following the news schedule, I know that the pundits haven't really been talking about this, but Scott Hall actually pleaded guilty in the state of Georgia to the first round of racketeering charges out of Fulton County and Fani Willis's case against Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Jenna Ellis, and Sidney Powell, and a multitude of others. There's like 19 defendants in that particular case. So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that Scott Hall pleaded guilty. So I have been kind of browsing the news and seeing all these different articles talking about how this man pled guilty and how it's spelling the beginning of the end for the Trump campaign and the RICO charges and so on and so forth. Because a lot of people thought that Fani was not going to be able to handle the splitting of cases, the size of the RICO charges that she levied, and actually move through the process in a timely fashion. I believe that Sidney Powell and a few others called the state's bluff and decided that they were going to waive their right to reconcile with their lawyers so that they could mount a proper defense. They were ready to go into court and didn't feel that the district attorney's office would be ready. So they went ahead and called the bluff and, wanted their speedy trial, their day in court. So there was some speculation that that was going to cause some issues for Fani Willis, which I had to agree with that. Excuse me. I do believe that separating these charges and pushing the district attorney's office into a position where they had to prosecute immediately was probably one of the better choices to get this kind of move through the court system in a quick fashion and come to a conclusion. But with the plea deal for Scott Hall, it's a little different in my opinion. So if I'm understanding this gentleman's position correctly, he was charged with the tampering of voter devices. This is the man that actually hacked in real time on election day, one of the election machines. So I went looking for his charges. And of course, I can't really particularly find a charging document. Granted, I wasn't very diligent in my searching. I could probably really hunt it down if I wanted to, but I have been busy with other things. So we're just going to kind of go off of what we think we know. And I'll be forefront and honest with you. I'm not sure exactly what his charges are. I know that during the course of the plea deal, They were pled down, so they're not as maximum or the highest charged allegations that you can get. But the man hacked this voting machine. So this is where we come into a very interesting situation with the charges that were levied, what he pled to, and now actually pleading guilty. If you remember correctly, the entire narrative of Dominion voting machines focused upon their accessibility, the fact that they were running on QR codes that we didn't necessarily have the correct information to read properly. The QR codes come printed on your ballot with a list of what selections live inside that code, but there is, we're not computers. We can't read the QR code. So we don't really know. We have to trust that that's what the computer was programmed to do, is take the selections that are printed in English on your paper, translate them to computer speak in the QR code, and allow for the QR reader to read the code properly and administer the choices that you have made. Now, you guys know that I work in Effingham County for the elections office, and I work on election day specifically with Dominion machines. And throughout the 3 years that we've had Dominion in Georgia, I have meticulously and painstakingly followed the process of the ballot on election day, from the check-ins at the poll pads to the bringing up of the ballot on the BMD machines, to the printing of the ballot, and then ultimately through the scanner box and to the Board of Elections office at the end of the night. Now, Effingham County can boast that their audits were, I believe we were at like a 96, 97% accuracy. So our Board of Elections director had painstakingly audited the entire county prior to anybody asking for an audit. It's just part of what Effingham County does in order to ensure free and fair elections. And we don't want to go to jail. One of the running jokes in the precincts is that, Effingham County is too pretty to go to jail, and we will follow the rules and the law to make sure that this goes off without a hitch. And it really comes down to the people inside the precinct and who cares about doing their job and doing it meticulous and doing it well and holding others to a higher standard and to a higher degree. And when you look across the state of Georgia, particularly at Fulton County in general, it makes you wonder what type of people are working in those precincts and in that particular county. We've talked about the fact that they have had their audits, have come out and said that their audits were incorrect in some form or fashion due to human error. And again, this comes back down to the people in the precinct. But back to Scott Hall. Scott Hall hacked one of these machines in real time, and I believe that's what he was being charged with. So, okay, we talked about all the people inside the precincts that are responsible for maintaining and being in charge of these machines, but we also know that this man was able to hack the machine from outside forces and manipulate tabulations and tallies. So again, to correlate those 2 points, the issue is, we have a bunch of people who are in charge of these machines, but ultimately at the end of the day, we also have a vulnerability on the technology side, because we have now proven that those machines can be tampered with from the outside. And because Mr. Hall has pled guilty, from what I understand, to these charges, that right there proves that there is something to the Dominion machines that Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani and Linwood and a lot of other people were actually talking about. Does it have anything to do with the ghost of Hugo Chavez? Absolutely not. But we are talking about limitations of humans to read computer code and accurately decipher whether or not the codes are lining up to the type of actions we want them to perform, if that makes sense. So ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have hacked a machine in order to prove that the machines are hackable, did you commit a crime? And the answer is yes. And I think that's where we're able to take this particular plea deal and turn it into something that maybe it's not necessarily supposed to appear to be. A lot of the mainstream media is going to come out and claim that, this is Scott turning on Trump, that this is a turning point for the prosecution, that this is going to make a difference on other people's cases moving forward. And in some way, I do believe that they're going to find a way to make all this mesh well in the court system, because that's the whole point of a RICO case. When you have an organized crime syndicate that is, putting people into places to commit minor crimes that ultimately culminate into a higher crime ring, that's ultimately what they're trying to do here. But don't let them confuse you into thinking that this man just went and did this on his own accord. It was done to prove a point. And in the same breath, we heard for the past 3 years that this was the most free, fair election in modern American history. And you just convicted somebody of committing fraud or hacking a machine. You've committed somebody to that particular crime. So you can no longer say that fraud doesn't exist. You've destroyed that particular part of the narrative, even if the attempted fraud received no bearing, like it didn't flesh out. It's like an attempted robbery. You went into the bank and you tried to rob it, but you couldn't get out with the money. Doesn't make it any less of a crime. So it's interesting to me that we are focused now on stating that this man was part of this fraud, and he's going to plead guilty. And this obviously has to look bad for Trump. But we also forgot that they admitted that, again, Fulton County had major issues with their audit, and that their issues were, human error and human based. So we are really witnessing a point in time where the media wants to have its cake and eat it too, because they want you to believe that this was a free, fair, best election in the history of modern United States. Yet in the same breath, they're turning around and saying, well, these people committed fraud. We have this particular fraud. It's not really fraud. It's just a mistake. We didn't really mean to do it. And you really shouldn't look at us funny because everybody makes mistakes. It's all a bunch of nonsense to get you confused, to pit you into your sides, to get you to pick your principles. To get you to pick your party over principles, and get into tribalism mentality where you are going to have to make a decision whether you believe what you see with your eyes or you believe what people are telling you to believe. Which brings us into the rallies over debates with Donald Trump. We've had two Republican debates already. And if anybody has watched even clips of the nightmare that was the quote unquote potential presidential debates, this is getting not only ridiculous, but a little bit shameful on behalf of the Republicans. They're not even attempting to petition on some sort of principles for America. They're not trying to put working policy into play. And, when Amanda and I did the debates 2 years ago on Strange Bedfellas, and we decided that we were going to pitch our own presidential campaigns, and then we were going to talk about what politicians should be conveying back to their constituents as far as their power goes and what they are able to accomplish in office. And I think that her and I did a really good job of, laying out groundwork for people to understand what is in the capacity of a president, as opposed to what do you want a president to accomplish. And the separation of powers is becoming a blurred line for the American people, where they are reaching a point where they say they don't care how these things get done, whether it be through executive fiat or a piece of legislation that has absolutely nothing to do with constitutional values, or allowing their sheriff's department to lack in law enforcement in their local areas. And we're talking on a very, very small basis, your municipalities, your counties, your very local governments. And this is a shame, because again, the more that we ask for overbearing power, the more that we ask the government to step in, the more detrimental these forces become on our lives. We end up having to live by other people's rules and other people's kind of thought process or values, instead of being able to work upon our own values without infringement upon another. And a lot of people are going to their sheriff's departments, and they're going to their police departments, and they're going to their local representatives. And these people, again, are so convoluted and so hyped up with power that they refuse to relinquish their viewpoint. Because if they do, that viewpoint will not only destroy their world and their lives and what they've based their principles on, but it also removes them from a place of importance in the grand scheme of society. I think that these people believe themselves to be a powerful force of good, and a lot of them believe that they are accomplishing the right goals and tasks when they move through their jobs. But what the American people are experiencing is a much different outcome. We are, finding ourselves in situations where we have to defend ourselves on a more serious level. The amount of gun usage in self-defense has been at the forefront of a lot of 2A advocate channels. And more than ever, I have seen people having to use their weapons to defend themselves. And let's be crystal clear. When you use your weapon to defend yourself, yes, somebody is getting hurt, whoever is imposing themselves upon you, but you don't walk away from that situation unscathed. There is always going to be some sort of mental detriment to your choices. And a lot of people have sympathy and empathy, even for people who are in the wrong. It's part of human nature. So if you think that these people are just waiting for the day where they can pop off with their weapon and walk away like a cowboy, I don't believe that it happens that way. And a lot of these people find themselves on the wrong side of the law. So it's not like they can just defend themselves and walk away and not have to think about it again. But this is where we are, because we're allowing people like the Republican candidates to stand up on stage and tell us about how they are more concerned with the war in Ukraine. You have Mike Pence that told us that his concern is not the American people. You have Nikki Haley, who is basically telling people if she gets into office that she will create secret operatives that will be working in other countries to eliminate child trafficking and things like that. But people hear those things and they're like, oh, I'm empathetic. I care about people in Ukraine. I care about the people who are having their children ripped away from them and so on and so forth. But what they don't hear is the repercussions for the American people who have to fund the Ukrainian war, the American people who are going to be at risk near the border from these secret co-op potential organizations of multi-international espionage or rescue operations. I mean, this is not only not anything to do with what the president should be focused on, but it is also painting us to be quite ignorant individuals. And the fact that we have a crowd of people in the same room as these Republican candidates and they're cheering and they're egging them on, it highlights, in my opinion, the ignorance of the American people to the values of the Constitution and why it is so important to hamstring the executive branch into what their specific enumerated duties should be. And again, we've watched Obama, Trump included, and now Biden issue executive orders and attempt to put these things into meaningful law and severely impact everyday Americans based on what one person wants. We talk about the idea of a republic and the 2/3 majority being the best way to solve a democratic debate. Democracy, you think of a 51% majority. If, 49 people don't want something and 51% people do, we're going to go with the majority and we're going to implement that. Damn the 49%. Okay, I guess, but you have now, again, it's highlighted in this particular moment in time where half of the people are not happy with the rule of law. They're not happy with the way that this is going. And we see actual unrest because of it. We have people who are looting, rioting in the streets. Look at what happened in Philadelphia over this past weekend due to the fact that there were no criminal charges against a officer of the law who was perceived to be acting in his capacity as a law enforcement officer. These people are so confused about where the power lies, and they're so confused about how much power they actually have that they act out and they go above and beyond to ruin their communities, ruin their lives, ruin the economy of the people that live in their neighborhoods because they don't understand separation of powers, because they are being lied to constantly by politicians, because there is somebody telling them that they deserve more than what they are capable of providing for themselves. And we're watching it happen in real time. It's not doing anybody any favors. And we really need to start speaking out, not about our opinions on what we think should be happening, not on who we believe to be the most popular candidate, and not even advocating for somebody like Vivek, who is attempting to fundamentally change at its core the restraining principles of the Constitution upon the government. We watch this happen. I ask people all the time, why do you believe that the Constitution is not working? And most people will tell me it's because of this clause, or it's because of this law, or it's because of this particular treaty or executive order or whatever. And if you ask them to point to you in the Constitution, what allows the government to pass that law? What allows the trading off of powers or the dereliction of duty from Congress to the FBI, or from the judicial branch back to Congress, or the executive branch to take over the legislative branch? Where is the allotment for that in the Constitution? And what you'll find is there is no allotment for it. There is no section, article, clause, or paragraph that will allow you to create these particular entities, to do these particular actions. Yet in the same breath, you will tell me that the Constitution is the problem. And I digress. I believe that, again, the interpretation of the Constitution on an arbitrary basis is the problem. If we, again, go back to the original writings of the Founding Fathers as they were constructing the documents, we've not stopped having the same arguments that they had at the very beginning. We're not escalated to some supernatural intelligence level where we're so much smarter and we know so much more. The basic principles of human nature are exactly the same now as they were then, and we're literally rehashing the same argument over and over again, but to our own detriment, because we are allowing other people to put their injections and their opinions and their thoughts into the pie, which makes us this shit cake that we don't want to eat. We don't want to give to anybody else because, that's disgusting, who shares a shit cake. But with all that being said, this is a problem of the American people to consider themselves too ignorant to to understand what the founding fathers meant, to consider themselves too stupid to rehash the conversations of 200 years ago and say, hey, nothing's really changed here. This worked just fine. Who changed the procedure and why did they change it? And what you'll find through even the very next year after the Constitution was ratified, that human nature persists. There were founding fathers themselves who wanted to change different parts of the amendments and parts of the process and parts of the things to give themselves an advantage once they got into the presidency or once they got into Congress or once they got into the judicial branch. Those things don't change. And the beauty of the Constitution was that it was pretty airtight, that you literally had to physically change the wording, change the idea, change the document to carry out what you wanted to achieve through the amendment process. But history is doomed to repeat itself for those who refuse to study it. And what we have noticed over the many years of this country is that we are repeating ourselves ad nauseum. We are not even attempting to restrain our government through the Constitution. We are attempting to restrain our citizens through the Constitution. A lot of people believe that the Constitution is an enumerated value of what the citizenry is entitled to. And I beg you people to reverse that. That is not the way the Constitution was set up. It was set up to be a restraint on the people in power. The restraints of the people are limited only to what others will tolerate. And a good way to look at this is, you are free to do what you will as long as you do not infringe upon another. Once the infringement is perceived or comes about between two citizens, that's why we have the neutral third party in the judiciary to arbitrate those disputes. We should have somebody sitting on the outside who doesn't have skin in the game for either party, and they listen to the facts and evidence that are brought into a courtroom, and they're able to make a decision based upon those facts and evidence. And even still, we had juries put into play where it wasn't even up to one single judge. It was up to a jury of your peers, so that you couldn't turn around and say, well, that person doesn't like me. So the judge was already prejudiced against me. They didn't want me to do what I was doing, and that's why they threw me in jail. With a jury and the prerequisites for a jury to come to a unanimous decision, those were the most fair ways of advocating for conflict between the citizenry. And you guys have heard me talk about this before, where we've lost that. And the state now acts on behalf of the citizens as if, they have your best interest at heart, which is another lie. You're hard pressed to walk into a police precinct and actually bring charges upon somebody. I know lots of people who are robbed, have their personal properties taken, may know somebody who has a vendetta against them. They can't walk into a precinct and say, hey, I know this person had an issue with me and now my stuff is missing. He told everybody he was going to come steal my things. And, you can't get them to start an investigation upon that. It's all hearsay, and you don't know anything about the law, and it's beyond their purview. They don't want to be a part of it. It's really quite sad what our police and sheriff's departments have been reduced to, and that they take the lead on behalf of the citizenry. And most of the citizens are finding themselves in situations where they feel like they don't have the same ability as, say, the judiciary or the police force to file a grievance against another citizen, which, again, was supposed to be the whole reason for the police force, not for them to protect you, not for them to keep you safe, for them to act as a neutral body in between the citizens and allow them to be as free as possible while controlling any disharmony or discord between the citizens and the individuals. That's a whole nother topic of conversation. Continuing through the pathetic challengers to the Republican debates, I've heard a lot of nonsense about, oh, well, Trump isn't here and he's ducking the process and so on and so forth. But let me just say that, what our Republican challengers are bringing to the table isn't even worth talking about. When you look at Donald Trump's rallies and the emotion and information that he's bringing to the table in those rallies and to those people, I believe pales everybody else's viewpoint to his. There is real corruption that is really happening, that is really being overlooked due to the fact that you don't necessarily like Donald Trump. And okay, let's go ahead and go there. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go ahead and say, I don't want to see Hunter Biden in jail for lying on an application for a firearm. I'll be the first one to say it. I don't believe that rises to the level of criminal actions. But what I do believe he should be charged with is dumping his registered weapon in a dumpster behind the school. There's a problem there. You cannot just throw your gun anywhere and not be held accountable for it. There's a big difference between wanting to see somebody held on criminal charges for something that is and should be a crime. When you own a weapon, it is your job to secure said weapon. You do not want to put it in the hands of children who could misuse that weapon. And I believe that that is a egregious violation. Do I care that he's a crackhead with a gun? No, I really don't. And I'll tell you why. Because criminals who are crackheads can also get guns. That doesn't stop that from happening. And the fact that you lied to the government doesn't necessarily bother me either. Okay, let's be crystal clear. There should not really be a vetting process to gaining a weapon. You are guaranteed your right to keep and bear arms equivalent to the level of those who would act against you. This includes foreign nations. This includes your own government. This includes people in your neighborhood who would act against you. You should be able to protect yourself in a very similar fashion. What really bothers me is the fact that a lot of people who are jumping on this bandwagon. Oh, he lied. I don't care. I really don't care. Him lying on that application to the government, to me, is no different than going to the black market and picking up a unregistered weapon that the federal government would not know anything about otherwise. Another thing I'd like to say is his taxes. As much as I understand everybody's, because realistically what it is rules for thee and not for me. That's what pisses you off, right? You don't want to pay your taxes every year and fund the Ukraine war and gender studies in Ghana and all the things that our money is going to that has absolutely nothing to do with America. And Hunter Biden gets to write off his crack and hookers as, untaxable assets and, business meetings, so on and so forth. Okay, I get it. I really do. And I understand the irate. I understand the outrage. But when you're talking about the excessive tax bracket that, a certain income falls into, or even just, the fact that we have such a low income poverty level where those people don't have to pay taxes. The arbitrary nature of taxes, again, getting back into what the Constitution states the taxes were supposed to be levied for and appropriate taxation per representation, how far we've gotten away from that. The entire tax code needs rewritten. But then again, we talk about coming back to eliminating the alphabet soup agencies with the IRS included in that. So what are we really angry about? We are really angry that these people are allowing themselves to have rules and laws that apply to them that don't apply to American citizens. So are we really pissed off that Hunter Biden didn't pay his taxes? No, that has nothing to do with it. And I know that a lot of Republicans are getting backlash for this because of that exact reason. We're not supposed to be worried about what Hunter Biden paid and if Hunter Biden paid his taxes because we're Republicans and we don't believe in taxes anyways. You're right, absolutely. But the point is not that he's not paying his taxes. The point is that we have a separate institution to handle those who would not pay or those who would be in default based on where you fall in a political scheme or who's in charge. And those arbitrary rules are what's really pushing the divide in America. And it goes back again to who's interpreting what clause of the Constitution as opposed to what does the damn document just say, because it's written in English. You can read it. It's very straightforward and point blank. Which brings me to another issue that I have with Brian Kemp in Georgia. So we know that the governors are not necessarily supposed to be engaged in foreign relations. And Brian Kemp ran in Georgia on the idea that he was against illegal immigration. He wanted to cut back on the amount of green cards that we were giving out to encourage, people to go actually seek citizenship, not just employment in the United States. And then throughout his governorship, it is becoming increasingly clear that he's walking all of that back. He's issuing more green cards than ever. He's encouraging foreign exchange programs for medical degrees and licenses and allowing these people to come into Georgia, learn through our institutions, gain access to our state, and then, be able to move freely with that, gain knowledge to do whatever they want. They're not citizens. They're temporary work visas that these people are getting issued. And after that, there's no allegiance to the state of Georgia or the United States of America. They're coming here, they're getting all these benefits, and then they're being able to, take that knowledge with them wherever they go. It's kind of crazy to me. And I think that Kemp is flying under the radar right now because of all the Trump issues. And Fani Willis is right here in his state as well. And he's not speaking out against her in any way, shape, or form. So it's very interesting to me to watch him, get together with these Korean nationalists. And again, we know that the Asian population is the most, academically inclined, in my opinion, from what I've seen through statistics and so on, to come and take advantage of programs like this. So Kemp was, doing liaisons with the Korean foreign nationalists. He's upping the green card ante here in Georgia, and he's completely ignoring the overstep of government small government to federal prosecutions in his own state. So I don't know who out there really needs to hear that Brian Kemp needs to be on blast right now for the amount of underhanded, shady things that I believe he is accomplishing in the state of Georgia on the sly, while everybody else's attention is focused on Fulton County and Donald Trump and the Republican debates and moving through the election cycle going into 2024. But the man will be up for re-election shortly. And if you think that he's doing a good job, and if you think that this is the proper way forward for the state of Georgia, then maybe we need to reestablish our values in this state. Where do we want to go moving forward? And who is going to have the best opportunity? Is that going to be people who are using the state of Georgia as a fly-by-night, overnight stay, just a pause in their path forward? Or do you want to invest in the people who are here for the long haul? Are you here to invest in the agriculture, in the infrastructure, in the population of the state? Because there are a lot of people here who don't want to move into the monopoly of the healthcare system that appears to be the way forward. There's been a lot of focus in the Georgia Representative House on the con deal, which is the it is the proper application of asking for healthcare facilities in rural areas. So what the state is attempting to do is bring healthcare access to rural Georgia. And in an effort to do that, they have created this cost of need program where they evaluate whether or not it is advantageous to put in a new medical facility into rural areas of Georgia. The interesting thing about those particular hearings is that this cost of need process can be challenged by other hospitals in the area because they're all competing for the same funding. So if you have a group of hospitals that all are pulling from the same pot, and one hospital is extremely busy, but you need to create a new hospital, there is going to be more issues with the existing hospital trying to push out a new hospital coming in because, of course, their funding will be affected by the construction of a new building and so on and so forth. So I've watched all these things happen separately. And I'm watching the dots start to connect themselves with Kemp's plan moving forward, his foreign relations teams reaching out to, these foreign nationalists. And I do believe that they're groups inside America. It's not like he's going ambassador style across to Korea and representing the state of Georgia on, the United States behalf or anything like that. So don't think that, that's exactly what's happening. But these people are, again, they're foreign nationalists who are in this country, who represent their home states, and they are negotiating with a governor who is putting into legislation or putting into the heads of legislators that this is the proper motion forward for the state and for the constituents here in Georgia. So we have no control over Fani Willis, but we're going to go ahead and see how many accelerated green cards that we can get for education purposes in relation to the healthcare field. But I digress. I want to lastly kind of talk about the Biden impeachment inquiry. And this is another thing that's getting kind of skewed in the headlines. And I know that Republicans and Democrats that aren't necessarily informed are all over the map on this inquiry. Okay, we watched the Democrats pretty much railroad Trump not once but twice. They had the majority of votes to do it, and they weren't particularly concerned with the idea of political malfeasance and whatever they believe that their reputations should be, because they went ahead and they did what they did. So not only did these people run through partisan impeachment twice, now they're trying to say that that is the most egregious offense that you could possibly commit in the House of Representatives or anywhere in politics as far as that goes. And oh my goodness, there's no evidence and there's no this. And even if there was evidence, it's Hunter Biden. It has nothing to do with Joe Biden, and there's no paper trail and there's no this. Let's pause. Okay, let's pause. Inquiry. What does that mean? To inquire, to question, to ask, to see evidence. Okay. We're at stage one. We are inquiring based upon the information that we have. So let's say we're just, I don't know, playing hangman or something. You don't necessarily know the word. There's, 7 letters in the word or 8 letters in the word, whatever. So you start guessing. Is there an A? Is there A-E-I-O-U-Y? Okay, so let's start with the vowels. Usually you start with your vowels. Anybody that's played Wheel of Fortune, you have to pay for the vowels because those will be your indicators, your clues, so to speak, to guess what the word could potentially be. So once you have your vowels into place, let's just say right now in the inquiry process, we're playing hangman. We have an 8-letter word and we only have the vowels. just based on what we have, we can kind of guess what the word is. But the problem is we cannot get to the word until we know all the letters in the word. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue to guess the letters until it creates a word, and then we can tell you what the word is going to be. Sometimes that ends up being sooner rather than later. You can pick out the word based on the first couple letters. That's where we're at in the inquiry process. We are asking, is there a this? Is there a that? Is there a this? So for Democrats to turn around and say that there is no there, it just highlights their blatant disregard, to be honest. It highlights their inability to look at anything through a unpartisan lens. It doesn't even have to be a bipartisan lens. I don't even care if you look at it through a Republican scope or through a Democratic scope. Like, I don't care. I want you to remove all emotions, all your preconceived ideas, all your preconceived notions of what should be, and just look at what is there. And ask yourself, did you or did you not just impeach the former president based upon almost the same principles? You impeached a man for asking a question about another political person's dealings in a foreign country, which is treason. If you are working against the United States to aid or render comfort to a foreign country over your own country, a lot of people will think that, like, you have to sell out secrets, or you have to do this, or you have to do that. In my opinion, treason is any time you pick another country over your own. You put their best interest ahead of your own. That's treasonous, because if that country takes advantage, and let's be real here, people are not lovey-dovey, let's just let bygones be bygones, okay? They take advantage, and countries are no different than people. Countries are comprised of people, and good people, bad people, could be all different types of people. But these people can take advantage of you. So right now, we are very beneficial to Ukraine. But let's say one day that stops. Why would I believe, even for 1 second, that Joe Biden would not make his allegiance to Ukraine over the United States if the United States isn't threatening to kill him? Because let's be real, we've gotten real soft on treasonous behavior, especially with our own citizens. So if we as the United States kind of say, well, you know, you can render aid and comfort to pretty much any other country that you want, that's not a problem. We're not going to hold you responsible for that. But Ukraine says, if you don't denounce America, or if you don't work entirely for our benefit, we're going to kill you. We're going to kill your family. We're going to come after you. I mean, I'm talking about Ukraine, but China's doing this, and Russia's doing this. And it's not out of the realm for these countries to put these turncoats into these positions. And that's what the issue actually is. And if you care about America, fuck a Democrat, fuck a Republican. Why are we allowing somebody who does not have America's best interest at heart to wheel and deal in a foreign country, whether as acting president, as acting vice president, as vice president's son? Because that's what we're talking about here. We are talking about the vice president's son using the Biden name to influence and peddle money, power, policy overseas. And Hunter Biden, in case you didn't know, is not very allegiant to anything but hookers and crack. Okay. The man kind of looks like he will do anything for hookers and crack. That's really low bar, a really low bar. How much does Hunter know? I mean, we talk about him being a crackhead, but crackheads remember things too. Crackheads know things too. There's a reason why, you know, on narcs and Vice and things like that, they use those people as informants. They use those people to make their cases a lot of times. Because when you think a crackhead's not listening, they're listening and they're retaining, and they don't care who they blab it to, because that crack rock will suffice. That hooker will suffice. That blowjob will suffice. They will have loose lips. They will be talking. And this is the problem. This is what we're talking about. The vulnerability of the United States based upon the actions and inactions of those people in office. So if Trump wasn't able to get to the bottom of what exactly did Biden do when he fired the prosecutor in Ukraine, we as Americans, we didn't know about that at the time. We didn't find out about that for years after the fact. And it was done. And a lot of people saw this clip on mainstream media about, you know, son of a bitch, he got fired, and everybody laughs and thinks it's funny. But what does that actually mean? What type of influence did these people have upon each other? And again, what are we talking about going on behind closed doors? It's a sticky wicket for sure, because there are people who will tell you that it is national security and we the people don't have a right to know. And I'm tired of that being the case as well. The more that the American people don't know, the more we are pushed out of our actual positions of power to be self-governing individuals. There's a reason why there is no country that will invade our space. There is no army that will find themselves on American shores. And it isn't because of our military. Let me be the first one to tell you, because they're overseas right now and they're still fighting in the Middle East. They're still fighting on the borders of Ukraine and Russia. They're still fighting in Tanzania and, civil war in South Africa. And there are troops all across the globe. There's a reason why they won't come here. And it is because not only are we self-governing individuals who are well equipped and armed to protect ourselves, but we will fight to the death for our personal property, because that is what our country was based upon. The ability to keep and maintain your own standards of living. So the more that we divert that responsibility to the government, the more that we allow somebody to come in and be an arbitrating factor over how we live our lives, or who is in charge of our country, or who is dealing with the rest of the globe on our behalf, the less and less we become part of the solution, the more we become part of the problem. I had an interaction on Twitter, and, I don't want to disrespect any of our military members, because, I do have a lot of respect for those veterans who were in wartime situations, who saw actual physical combat. I understand and I sympathize with that. But my problem with the military is that we are creating soldiers who don't ask questions. And somebody came in and said that, they're encouraged to ask questions so they can pick and choose leaders. But even then, those leaders are limited on what they can say, what they can speak. What happened to Stuart Scheller in particular was disgusting, in my opinion, for his asking of questions, for his begging the top chain of command to be transparent with the individuals in their battalions, in the American citizenry, people who were asking questions about how we left Afghanistan and why we were put into that position to begin with. And that's what happens to most of the military people. And when they see that happen to their, battle buddies, when they see that happen to the people in their platoons and their divisions and their ranks and so on and so forth, it squashes that resistance. It squashes anybody's desire to back that person up, because they don't want to be at the detriment of the hierarchy. They don't want to be on the wrong side of the stick. And then they come home and they were put into that position in their squads. So now they look at government almost as if they were their commanders. And they say things like, well, we may not have the full story, or we may not understand what they're doing. We have to trust them, or we have to do X, Y, Z. I don't agree with that synopsis or situation whatsoever. There really should be more transparency when it comes to what the military is doing, who is, moving where, why are we putting, troops in certain areas. And there should be some way to address the grievances of the individuals in command, because they're not always right. And just because you have metal and decorations and all these different pins and whatever issues, doesn't make you a smart person. It doesn't make you the type of person that we should definitely rely upon. I think that those type of decisions are really something that comes through experience. And if you can't share that experience, and you can't highlight your body of work, and all of your accolades are coming on secret op missions or what other people in the chain of command say about your performance, it's not very impressive to me. And the fact that you come home and back bad decisions over and over and over again, leads me to believe that there's some issue in the rank and file military that needs to be addressed, so that we come home with strong, independent, constitutionally sound soldiers who are able to not only protect the individuals in their communities, because a lot of these people come home and they join the militias and they join police forces and they do, reserves and so on and so forth. But you need to make them smart enough to start sharing that experience with the people in their community. So yeah, it's all great and grand to come home and talk about how you got pinned up for following orders, and you got pinned up for doing all the things. You did all the things right. You followed all the rules, and they gave you a gold star, patted you on the back, sent you home with accolades and honorable discharge. And now you get your discount at Target and your, healthcare for the rest of your life, and so on and so forth, and all your other little perks and all that jazz. But how many people actually acted in a constitutional fashion in their brigades? Did you know exactly what was going on, or did you just play a role? And how proud can you actually be if you consistently stand behind policies, actions, and maneuvers that are hurting the people here at home more than helping them? And again, this is not a dig on the military. I'm seeing some issues with the indoctrination process across America. You have it in your public education system. You have it in your secondary education system. It's cropping up in our military. You can't get out of it in politics. You have to deal with it in the police force. It's creeping into your businesses. We can't escape it. So again, the only way out of this, the only solution that I can see having an impact is educating our constituency, educating our children, educating everybody as much as possible. Just keep saying it on repeat, on a loop, about the proper context of the Constitution, what it means to be self-governing, and toning down that allegiance to personality, toning down the desire to be a part of the party, turning down the temperature of, your brightest, biggest personality being the only proper way forward. All of that goes by the wayside when it comes to American principles, American constitutionality, and the right of the people to govern themselves and not infringe upon their neighbors to the best of their ability, including but not limited to protecting yourself and being aware of what's going on in the world and what potential threats exist to us as a society. So that's a lot of information for you guys. I hope that you were able to hang on through the entire rambling and recap over the past 2 weeks. I will remind you that, again, we will be doing a Strange Bedfellas Patriot Picnic recap later this week. And on that note, I guess I will see you guys on the next one.